looks like we have some new devices on the table that first time that I've seen it. I think, John, you want to explain that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is John Myrtle. So as you can see, we have some new audio-visual equipment. Unfortunately, I'm hearing we're having a little difficulty with people remote hearing. We knew that we need to do some further calibration, so we will continue to work on that. You'll see there are cameras installed. Those are not quite ready yet. The install we knew was going to be kind of pushing up against these meetings. The last 3 weeks, the boardroom has been under construction. But the disc in front of you is the microphone. When it's red, it's muted. When it's green, it's live. So we're trying to iron out what's the best scenario. But we will have them all muted. And when you're speaking, if you can please make sure that you unmute yourself. Otherwise, we may need to consider having them all turned on and hearing at any moment. Again, we're trying to work that out with hearing the people on the line better. There are a couple commissioners that are remote for this meeting. In the last meeting, the speakers, the amplification of the people that were remote was frankly quite quiet. So it's, again, another thing we'll try to work through. But again, just please remember to unmute your microphone. And then these microphones, we were told, are quite sensitive. So you make sure you mute them when you're not speaking so it doesn't pick up side conversations. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Second item on the agenda.
Judy Allen, West Hartford. I'm not even sure this is the appropriate time, but it has to do with the minutes, or at least something came to my attention in the minutes. There was one issue at the last meeting that was important to me, having to do with term limits. And there was a voice vote, and the vote was, I think, 5-4. And there were 4 members not present and not voting. And the issue for me is how important it is for commissioners to be here. If those 4 commissioners had been here, I don't know how they would have voted, but it could have been a very different outcome. So I'm just noting that. Thank you.
Thank you.
He's going to speak into mine.
All right, so I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the May 9th meeting. Second? All in favor? Aye. Minutes are approved.
Yes.
We do.
We have Commissioners Anderson and Magnan are remote, and Commissioner Gentile is not on the committee, but she's also on.
Okay, moving along. Item number 4 is consideration and potential action regarding the sewer ordinance revisions. Chris, who's going to do the presentation on this?
Yeah, I can. No problem. So we had to update a number of ordinances in our local sewer ordinance manual, but just to go quickly through them, S3C, connections to sewers, S3S, maintenance of sewer connections, and then S3T, sewer stoppages, S3U, repair of house connections causing street cavities. We could start with the connections to sewers. First, does anyone have any questions on the?
Chris, let me just clarify.
Yep.
So in order to provide one ordinance that gives a free lateral to everybody, we have to modify a bunch of ordinances that that basically deal with liability and ownership issues and those things. So we had to modify each. Oh, sorry. So we had to modify each and every one of the ordinances that reference this topic. Okay. Go ahead, Chris. Sorry.
Sure. Just to, thanks, Scott, for putting it in perspective. So we did have the sewer lateral connection program. This is what Scott was referring to, that was approved in January 1 of 2020. That was for the liens, the voluntary liens for the replacement of the full length within the private property. That program, which will be discussed on Wednesday as far as the resolution to actually execute this ordinance, was rebranded as the sewer connection program. So with that being said, there is references to the sewer house connection, district sewer house connection program in each section of this ordinance. And basically that's defined as the district's ability to, one, go into a property. I always use this example. So day in the life of a customer, they start getting backup into their property. So basement flooding could be for one of many reasons. One reason may be the sewer surcharge, unprotected fixtures. So the sewer out in the street is surcharge and coming back into their home. Another reason may be there's a blockage in the main sewer. Again, unprotected fixtures in the property. That sewer backs up and enters their house. The one we see most often, which Scott was referring to, is there's something wrong with the house connection on private property or within the public right-of-way. But that pipe that connects the house to the sewer, something's not right. So there could be a defect, whether it could be a collapsed pipe or root blockage. So what these ordinances are providing is a way the district can go in, look to, one, identify what the issue is at the property. So through our backwater valve program, we do currently right now offer that CCTV inspection of the lateral to confirm the condition. Right now, it's the customer's responsibility to go ahead and find someone. They could utilize our voluntary lien program, but this would allow us post CCTV inspection is one, if we can't CCTV, is to rot it. So part of the sewer ordinances allows us to actually perform the rotting after the customer releases us to do that work. We could perform the rotting, and then after that, do the CCTV inspection to determine what the issue is on that lateral. Determine if it's roots. If it's roots, there's a possibility that the customer can do preventive maintenance. We'll define a maintenance program for that customer. If there's not an immediate need for a replacement or renewal of that lateral. If it's a collapsed pipe, the top section of the pipe caved in, there's a large separation of the joint, we could see soil. We're going to recommend immediate or near future renewal of that lateral. And then part of this ordinance is allowing us, the district, to go ahead and perform that work on private property. Currently, right now, if there's a structural issue within the public right-of-way, the district has the responsibility to do the excavation work, not the maintenance work of that, but to do the excavation work to repair that lateral within the street, public right-of-way. So this ordinance is just allowing us to perform that excavation work within the private lands, outside of the public right-of-way. Again, this is specific sections that we had to change to allow this, that were our current ordinances were just contradictory to allowing us to do that.
And so, if I may, so just to be clear, the one thing that became, right now, the ordinances are very clear. The property owner is responsible for maintenance, period. From the house all the way to Maine. As Chris mentioned, although we will excavate in the right-of-way to repair the lateral to the main, it's still the maintenance responsibility of the homeowner, because that's what our ordinances say, you will maintain your lateral. So if there's a backup in a home, and the backup's in the right-of-way, the lateral portion in the right-of-way, it's still the homeowner's responsibility. We don't pay, there's no claim paid because it's a blockage in the lateral. We're not, the challenge with these changes were to keep that liability exactly where it exists today to the homeowner, but offer, if you need a lateral replaced, we'll pay for it. So that was the real challenge in making all these changes, and I think staff and legal did a very good job in doing that. If there are any questions and comments, tonight or or before the board meeting, we can make those changes, but that was the goal, to make sure that the liability still stays. I'll give you an example. Mrs. Jones goes up in the middle of the night and she says, I got sewage in my basement. We go to her home and she says, we find out. Now, right now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna rod that lateral in the middle of the night, and we're gonna TV it and find out what happened, right? So under this new ordinance, we would do that. And if her lateral needs to be replaced immediately, we'll make sure it gets replaced immediately. But if Mrs. Jones's lateral just needed to be rotted and it's decaying and it needs to be replaced and it gets put on we do an assessment, and we're gonna say, okay, that lateral could last a month, it could last 5 years, but we're gonna put you on the list. We want that liability to stay with the homeowner, because if it's on the list and we don't get to it and it collapses, we don't want to be held liable for it. So we want to make sure that that kind of language is in here, and otherwise you're going to accept an awful lot of liability as part of this program. So that's really the synopsis of it. As Chris mentioned, and we think that this is going to be a very positive solution for our customers, a very positive solution for protecting the home and from surcharging, and it's going to be a better benefit to the environmental conditions of discharges CSOs to the river than what we're proposing now.
Novella, yes.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, could you turn on your mic?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to the Chief Executive Officer. So you're saying that you just can't get a new lateral because you want a new lateral. There's got to be an intentive reason for it.
Yeah.
And who makes that decision, though? The district board? I mean, district, the MDC?
Yes, MDC.
Okay.
So just a matter of practice, the way it works right now, Mrs. Jones, she calls up and says, you know, I got sewer in my basement. It was a surcharge from a rain event. We immediately do an assessment, a backwater valve assessment. We go through, and in order to assess and make sure that her backwater valve is going to work, we TV and rod her lateral as part of the program, the backwater valve program, because we want to make sure, we don't want to hook up a backwater valve to a pipe that's failing, right? So we want to make sure that, but in the case today, we would do the backwater valve program, and we say to Mrs. Jones, you have to pay for your lateral and you can finance it through your water bill. This proposal will be, we will pay up to a certain amount, $10,000, and we will have a contractor working directly with the homeowner. We will be reimbursing the homeowner has to reimburse the contractor, so that the homeowner's taking responsibility for the engagement between we'll be there to inspect, we'll be there to oversee, we'll make sure it's done correctly. We don't want contractors taking advantage of our customers, so we'll make sure that we have vetted contractors, and if they propose to use somebody else, we will vet them to make sure that they're qualified. Will I answer your question?
Yep.
Sure.
She was going to say yes or no, but,
I'm sorry.
okay.
And Scott, I
I
can
have a tough time with that.
We do have a standard of inspection, so it's we use an industry standard called NASCO, LACP. It's a lateral assessment certification program. So there is specific recommendations based on the code that is received on the assessment. So it's, if the pipe's deformed 10%, it gets a 3. If it's 20%, it's a 4. Those numbers indicate the likelihood of failure, and then the period that you need to address that defect in. So if there's any justification that we're using a standard to define what that period is, not our own interpretation.
But to clear, but we don't want to be held responsible if it fails before that, right? So we're going to do our best efforts, and we will make sure that we will do our best efforts to someone's on the list, that we get them, and we're going to prioritize the laterals that need the replacement the soonest. We don't want someone's lateral collapsing when they're sitting there waiting for a lateral program So, and we'll have a multitude of resources. Our staff does not physically do the replacement. We use contractors, so there's a broad base of contractors that we can utilize. I will be asking, this program is a big program for the MDC, and it's a positive thing. It's a very, very positive thing. But it's going to require more staff. And it's not just this program, it's, we're doing a lot more in utility services, and so I'll be asking for additional staff in different components, engineering, inspection, utility services, procurement, just kidding. But finance, we need more resources, because these are very complicated, spiderweb type programs that reach out through every department in the district, and we need a lot of coordination. So we will be asking for additional TO positions this coming year.
Well, yes.
I guess I've got a general question here, and that is, we've drafted this stuff in-house. And I guess my concern is, has anyone else taken a look at this and had a discussion with you about it in terms of if they have experience in this area, in construction and laterals and everything else? Have you got a second opinion in terms of somebody who does this kind of work, or a public works official in one of the towns somewhere that says, this looks like this hangs together and it works? Or are we in a sense basically relying on our own expertise and knowledge and experience? And I guess I'm always sort of concerned about that unknown factor out there. You're going to be doing this in the community. You're going to be dealing with a lot of folks who are not very sophisticated. And that, to me, is a prescription for trouble. And I guess I'm just a little nervous about this. In terms of, I'd like to hear from other people who, in effect, may be the opposition, or other people that basically do this, and say, well, maybe did you guys think about this, or should we be doing this? I mean, I'm not trying to be negative about this, but I just think that, I think we need to be very careful. Because I think that if we screw this up, excuse expression, there's going to be hell to pay for it. So I guess that's my concern here as a commissioner, that I guess I'd like to hear, from someone who basically, a guy who's in the business, who can maybe give me some insights, or maybe, I don't know, can offer you some insights. I'm not saying, look, you guys are in the business, you do this stuff. But, I guess I'm a little unsettled, that's all.
If I may, Mr. With all due respect, Commissioner, no one does this except MDC. So we've been doing this a long time. Our staff is the best in the industry. There's nobody better. We actually have to teach our plumbers that we hire, plumbing contractors, to actually do what we do. No one does what we do. So there is nobody to, except the MDC, to look to find out how you do this stuff. We've been doing backwater valves for a long time. It's migrated and changed over the years. It was approved by the board in 1998. It's significantly changed in being sophisticated compared to a simple backwater valve and the location of a backwater valve. We've been doing separation work for a long time. As you know, we talk about this all the time. No one in Connecticut is doing clean water separation work. New Haven, Bridgeport, We're the only ones doing this work. So we've learned by experience. How many backwater valves have we installed, Chris?
This year, or 2020, I forget.
About 700 this year.
Yeah. So there's nobody in Connecticut, or plumbers in Connecticut, except the ones that work for us, that actually do this kind of work. It's a very unique set of, there's other contractors that do things that are not similar to our separation work, but there is nobody that's more qualified to review this than MDC staff.
Well, I'm not talking just about backwater valves. I mean, there are other things in here that we're doing. I mean, you're putting in laterals, that means things like excavating. I mean, that's stuff that other people, that's not new or unique to the construction industry. Look, I'm not trying to get into a battle with you.
Yeah, no.
I mean, that's what you're doing, but that's okay. I mean, all I'm just saying basically is I think that this is something that is not a simple matter. And I'm just suggesting that we be prudent and that we make sure that we're approaching this in the right fashion. There's this technical stuff that, yes, okay. But also within this context, you are dealing in communities, once again, with folks who are not very sophisticated, okay? And I think that you just need to be very thoughtful and careful in this process. That's all I'm saying. Because you can draft this and it looks good on paper, but once you apply it and once things start to go wrong, then you're going to have all sorts of problems. That's all I'm saying.
Commissioner Buell.
Thank you. Respectfully, we have our answer. Can we move?
I would like to add that, and I don't appreciate that our customers in North Hartford are unsophisticated. I hope you address that, thank you. I would say that we have spent $1.7 billion at the MDC installing sewer laterals. So I do not appreciate the comment, because our staff is the most qualified staff to write a document like this. So, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I read through this and I saw that the term sewer house connection program is in here 20 times. All right, and which says that it's within the purview of the Bureau of Public Works. So this is just to make sure that these particular government ordinances match that. That's what we're looking at here. Now, one thing I haven't seen, because I'm not a member of the Bureau of Public Works, are we going to be seeing that on Wednesday? Okay, all right. And it's a little confusing. The last, what page am I on here? Page 4-8, just above John Hancock. It looks as though it was added and then crossed out. There's a whole big giant paragraph. So we added and then we deleted it.
Yeah, if I may, this is John Myrtle. So in your agenda materials, there's the resolution proposing revisions to the ordinances, and that's pages 4.1 through 4.4. Those ordinances shown in red line are the ordinances that were published for the public hearing back in May. And then following that, starting on page 4.5, is a proposed potential amendment for this committee to make changes, to amend the revisions as they went to the public hearing. And those revisions are shown in the blue text. And you're right, that last paragraph, I think it was kind of a reorganizing of the language. It was moving the language.
Right, because I think if I may, I think I saw it somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, admittedly, I was scrambling Friday to get this out, and I think when it was sent out, I looked at that and I realized that it's a weird track changes thing, and it probably didn't need to be there.
Yep. All right. Thank you very much.
It was more form over substance, though. Moving things around. Responding to some of the, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, responding to some of the comments from the public hearing. I think Commissioner Curry had a comment, members of the public had a comment, we tried to address those comments as well.
Commissioner Buell.
If this is approved tonight, are we gonna get a clean
Yes.
copy?
Yeah.
Toot sweet?
Yes.
That'll be for the board meeting.
And,
Great.
and
So,
if I may, Mr. To your point about the sewer house connection program, those materials were sent out for the BPW agenda on Wednesday, so that you can see the ordinance is kind of the legality to allow us to make these changes, and then that program document that's go to BPW has a lot more detail than you want to stick into the body of the ordinances.
Any other questions?
Yeah, question for council, if I may.
Yes, Commissioner Stuber.
Thank you. Just looking at now at the track changes version of sections S3S, and in the first sentence, it reads that it looks like the underlying existing ordinance reads that or it had read that all sewer house connections on private property shall be maintained by, and at the expense of the property owner. No, I think that, to my mind, that suggests that there's a distinction between what's on private property versus what's in the public right of way. And yet, as I read the new revised language, it sort of seems to imply that the entire length of the connection is the responsibility of the homeowner. And my recollection is that at least under the current ordinance is that the kind of that in the public right of way, that's MDC's responsibility, and then past the property line, it becomes the homeowner's responsibility. Is that still how this would?
Clarifying that issue, so the sewer ordinance is very clear that the maintenance of the sewer lateral is from the home to the main in the sewer, main in the street. We're trying to clarify that here, but what we do is if there's a blockage in the right of way, the homeowner does not have to fix that. We will fix that and clear that blockage. But the maintenance of that lateral is from the main to the main, from his house to the main. So we're just trying to clarify that issue.
So then as a follow-up question, if I may, so then is it the case that, so even though we're telling folks that we're going to pay to repair the entire of the lateral, we're still sort of shifting the onus of more maintenance of a larger portion of the lateral to the homeowner?
No, the maintenance under the ordinance, the maintenance of the lateral is from the house or business to the main in the street, period. What we do is we will, if there's a blockage within that portion from the main to the property line, we have traditionally, and our ordinance allow us to repair that, because the city of Hartford or any of our towns do not want any contractor out there digging in that portion of the street. They want the MDC to do that, so we do that. We're just clarifying that, so that exists today. And we're just saying exactly that, is that they still have to maintain that lateral from the home business to the main in the street.
I'm going to add, Chris Stone, I hope I'm not adding confusion to this, but under the definitional section of our sewer ordinances, which is not contained, because it's not being changed, it's not contained in this, we define the distinction between a house connection and a house connection lateral. The lateral is the stub that we put in, or the developer puts in from the main to the property line. That lateral, that house connection lateral, becomes part of the house connection upon it being connected. So at some point in time, if there's just that lateral, the stub from the main to the property line, that is our responsibility. When they're hooked up, as soon as they hook up a pipe, a sewer pipe, from the end point of that lateral to the house, the whole of it is described as a house connection. And it's that house connection from the house all the way to the main, even within the public right of way, is the owner's responsibility.
And that's one example, right? You could have a homeowner put a house connection in and the lateral all at the same time, right? But in development, you might have someone building 100 homes, and they're bringing the laterals outside the footprint of the right-of-way so that they can pave the road and get the utilities in, and then there's a stub there. But there's a lot of circumstances where they're bringing the house connection lateral right to the main. All at once, right? All at once.
I see, that's helpful, thank you.
Yeah.
Any questions?
We can clarify that if you think.
No, it helps to know that there was those additional defined terms in another section. That makes sense.
We can add that as part of the agenda memo for.
That probably would be helpful, yeah, to be able to read it all in one place.
We've got Wednesday.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll make some clarifications. It is a very, very, very confusing issue. And now this new lateral program that's being paid for by the Clean Water Project makes it even more complicated. So we're trying to keep that liability where it belongs with a homeowner, the best we can.
Thank you.
I will entertain a motion to approve the amendments. Moved. Second? All in favor?
Sorry, if I may, Mr. Chairman. In the materials, there was that proposed amendment with the blue text to amend the proposed revisions. So before we vote on the ordinance changes, if anybody's interested in making a motion to amend the ordinances as shown in the proposed amendment. Clear as.
Wow. Okay, so, all right,
So there was a proposed amendment distributed with your materials beforehand that we're recommending you approve to go to the board on Monday. Or, I'm sorry, Wednesday. And then, is there a second?
We got a second? I think we have a second. Second? Okay.
And then a vote on the amendment.
All in favor? Of the amendment? Of the blue? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? No abstentions? Okay. So now we're. And one abstention, okay, thank you. Now do we have to vote on the actual amendment itself, the actual ordinance itself?
The ordinance amendments as amended.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion for that. Can you explain that again? Can you,
Do you want me to?
yeah, please. No, just what
So now we're voting on, it's the main motion as amended by the last vote.
Okay. All in favor? Do I have, so moved, I have a second. Yeah, okay, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Extensions? One abstention, thank you. All right. Now, this will be taken up on Wednesday at the
board.
At the district board meeting. Okay, no, the board meeting.
BPW is considering the house connection program, but the ordinance itself are going directly to the board.
We'll talk about it at BPW.
I'm sure you will.
Yes,
Yeah,
the
okay.
program.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And we'll make that amendment, Commissioner Stewart suggested, and we'll have that drafted for Wednesday, so we can all review it.
Okay, moving along.
Wednesday.
Yeah.
And if there's any other comments, we're happy to incorporate, so if you have any questions or comments, please get them to John Myrtle, and we'll try to implement those as well.
All right, moving right along. Item number 5 is an opportunity for the general public comments. Anyone here from the general public that would like to make some comments?
It doesn't help with, it's amendments of ordinances, so I kept saying the word amendment like 5 times.
Good evening, commissioners and staff and administration. My name is Cynthia Jennings. I live at 86 Heartland Street in Hartford, Connecticut. And I have a few concerns and questions. First of all, thank you for anything that you've done that's moved this project forward. However, I question whether or not this is the same project that we thought was being funded by DEEP and by the governor. So my question is whether or not MDC has any liability, because we're not talking about sophisticated or unsophisticated, we're talking about legal liability as opposed to legal liability, okay? And the question here is because any one of these commissioners that are on this commission could themselves be hit with a bill because their quote-unquote lateral has failed in advance of some unknown date that very few people understand. My question is whether or not this is what was the intent of this money, because when the money was approved, it was my understanding that the laterals would all be done. Nobody said anything about the homeowners having to pay for something. And my question about this is, yes, maybe homeowners could be assessed liability by MDC, but at what point can MDC be assessed liability by the homeowners for failure to separate in a timely manner, for failure to do their job or your job in a professional manner, for breakdown and failure of a backflow valve? How much of that is the liability of MDC? So I think that before we start talking about liability, that first of all, those commissioners that are on here are also people who are homeowners, and they also may be faced with this. And it's unclear to me exactly how much money you are liable for as a homeowner, because when you buy your home, you are never told this. So the question also is whether or not MDC is not doing their job by not being present to advise each homeowner before they purchase their home what anything that happens with backflow valves or with the failure to separate, and who determines what the liability is. Because if you're talking about the homeowners having to go to court every time there's an issue, a dispute, that's an injustice. So maybe there should be a fund set aside to cover the cost of the legal cost of anything that comes up relative to a dispute, relative to the laterals. So I'm just making a statement about the fact that the liability that you're talking about is unclear to me. So I know, as an attorney and an environmental attorney, a civil rights attorney, I know it's got to be unclear to other people because I don't do backflow valves. I may be a professional in my area, but I do not have a clue how much money I, as a homeowner, am liable for, and at what point am I liable, and who decides liability, and how much liability is there. Because if you're going to do all the laterals, then everyone should start out with a clean slate, and people shouldn't have to worry about their laterals failing. But if you're now going to assess which lateral should be done first, and then if it doesn't meet the time frame, or somebody's lateral fails, then they have to pay for it. I mean, I think that in terms of voting on something like this, there should be a whole lot more discussion on what liability is actually and how that will be determined and who will be determining that. That's my concern about what you're presenting today and what's going to be voted on. And I don't think people even know what they're voting on because they don't know how much the liability is going to come to. They don't even know they don't even know, or most people don't know how much, what the liability actually is for a lateral, what the liability is for failure to separate. So there's a lot of things that we need to really discuss before you start assessing homeowners with a new tax or a new liability. So that's the only thing I'd like to discuss at this particular point. And I'm hoping that the vote on this is taken seriously and people realize that you're not just voting on our liability, you're voting on your own liability for your own home. And there's no insurance that covers this. So if you're talking about liability on a lateral, then we really need to take a look at what the liability is. And when you're installing these laterals and you've made a commitment to do all the laterals, what does it mean when somebody's lateral fails? And how are you then assessing liability to them for something that maybe you failed to get done on schedule? And I know you can't answer any questions, but I'm just putting that out there for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Jennings. Any other member of the
Yeah.
would like to make some comments, general comments? Okay, item number 6, Commissioners' requests for future agenda items. Hearing none, no other items on the agenda, I will entertain a motion for adjournment. All in favor? Against, no abstentions. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.